So estrogen and progesterone are the two main hormones, and they are produced during the menstrual cycle. So if you are not menstruating, you produce a little bit of it, but you're not producing a lot. So it comes from the ovaries. And if you're not ovulating, you're not producing these hormones at high enough levels. Let's call it that. And so in the beginning of a cycle, you have all your hormones are really low. Your ovary, so the brain signals down to the ovary, okay, it's time to ovulate. Let's start the process. And so at that point, the egg within the ovary and the follicle will start to make estrogen, and it gets bigger and bigger, more mature, and you get more and more estrogen. You'll get enough estrogen that'll trigger a signal in your brain to release a hormone called LH, or luteinizing hormone. Yeah. That will trigger the ovary to burst and to release the egg and to ovulate. So that is estrogen. And then when the egg is released to be fertilized, that empty follicle that the egg was in your ovary turns on itself and now starts making progesterone. It's called the corpus luteum. And what it does is it just makes progesterone for supposed to be at least 10 days, ideally 14 days. And so what that progesterone does is it signals to the uterus, hey, get ready. There might be a fertilized egg coming your way, and you have to be receptive to it. And so if we think about the actions of estrogen and progesterone on the uterus, we'll talk about that first. Estrogen on the uterus, it makes the uterus thick. So think of it as a nice, fluffy pillow where you really want to lay and like have a comfortable environment. That's what estrogen does, is it makes the uterus thicker and comfier. And then progesterone comes on, and then it makes it sticky or receptive. And so it starts, it makes the lining of the uterus produce these little like fingers. They're called receptors, but they're like little fingers that when the embryo comes in, it'll come and it'll attach, and it cause implantation. And so basically makes it stick to the uterine wall. So having enough estrogen to have a thick enough lining, and then enough progesterone to make it receptive, are very, very important. And so if you have too much estrogen and not enough progesterone, you will not get implantation and pregnancy. And if you have too much progesterone, not enough estrogen, you also will have the same problems. Estrogen and progesterone also work on the mind. They work on your bones. There's so many parts of estrogen and progesterone that are so important for the human body, for the woman's body, besides just for conception. So healthy bone production. So women that aren't menstruating tend to have weaker bones and are more prone to osteoporosis. This is why hormone replacement therapy is really good for older women that are more prone to like hip fractures and falls. They also have a protective function on the vessels and the heart. And what it does is estrogen comes in and acts on the cells, and it produces certain signaling pathways that affect the different places in your body. And then progesterone will come in and turn on a different set of proteins and messages. And so they have to talk to each other to have normal function. And if you're imbalanced, they can't talk to each other very well. Another really big one is the mind. And so estrogen is so creative. It opens up the receptors, the pathways in the brain that make women creative. And they just, when their estrogen's surging, they feel fantastic. They look good. Their partner feels that they look better. They, are just, they have more pep in their step. They've actually done studies where like your face is more symmetric when you have estrogen present. Like it's just wild. It's insane. It's crazy, right? And then progesterone will help your mind remember things and have cognitive function. And so another thing is when you start going through perimenopause, like, what happened to my keys? Or where did that go? It's because your progesterone is not as high as when your estrogen was high. And so you're starting to decrease the areas in the brain that relate to memory and cognitive function. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of estrogen and progesterone, and you know, cycling, and not just for conception, but just for
Yeah.